you so much for being here this evening. We have been working on this project for over a year, and the time has finally arrived. This collaboration between the Design Museum of Chicago and Loyola University New Orleans Department of Design through the Great Ideas of Humanity exhibition has been an incredible experience, bringing together so many people across our Loyola community and beyond. Before I introduce our esteemed guests from the Design Museum of Chicago and our moderator, I would like to take a moment to recognize and thank those who have made this lecture and tomorrow night's opening possible. It truly takes a village to bring something like this to life. A heartfelt thank you to Dean Dr. Cheryl Kennedy Heidel, Dr. Shanice Bickham, the Director of School of Communication and Design, and colleagues Albert DuPont, Sunny Lynn Thibodeau, and Caitlin Todd. Special thanks as well to faculty members Matt Norman, Caroline Schley, Lisa McKinley, Rushing Hayes, Callie Bloom, Jen Kim, Scott Gerke, and Ellen Sitkin, and to all the students whose creativity and hard work helped prepare the exhibition and related projects, and to anyone else who has really stepped up to help us out. And lastly, the biggest shout out to Ben Bennis, who brought this idea and collaboration to us and has encouraged, pushed, and pulled us in a gentle academic manner to make these events possible. At Loyola, we never do anything halfway. We are always challenging ourselves to grow, to push boundaries, and to engage deeply with ideas that shape our world. This exhibition is a reflection of that spirit, an exploration of how we've embraced the great ideas of humanity in our classrooms and beyond. We invite everyone to join us tomorrow evening from 5 to 7 p.m. for the official opening of the Great Ideas of Humanity exhibition, or as we have titled it, Great Ideas Loyno, in the DeBall Design Center on the 4th floor of Monroe Library. There will be live music, food, cake, and drinks as we celebrate together. It is also the grand opening of our new DeBall Design Center, and what a wonderful exhibition to inaugurate this space with. Tonight, we are thrilled to welcome 3 representatives from the Design Museum of Chicago, Tanner Woodford, Kevin Reeder, and Hao-Yu Liu, who will share insights into their work and projects. The images projected above will be from the museum's collection. I didn't know it would be already projected. The conversation will be moderated by Ben Bennis, art and design historian at Loyola. Thank you again for being here and for your support for this exciting collaboration. Let's enjoy the evening together. Now for a brief bio of each. Tanner Woodford is founder and executive director of the Design Museum of Chicago, which opened in 2012 as a volunteer-run organization. Over the past 13 years, Tanner has expanded the museum to year-round operations with 4 full-time staff, 21 board members, and numerous volunteers and interns. Under his leadership, Design Museum of Chicago has hosted over 38 exhibitions, 285 free public programs, 50 workshops, and commissioned more than 70,000 square feet of new work. As an artist, Tanner paints optimistic, typographic, and larger-than-life murals. His work has appeared in the WNDR Museum, Soho House, Chicago, and is permanently installed in the John Hancock Building. In 2020, Tanner was appointed to the City of Chicago's Cultural Advisory Council. He leads with optimism and a belief in design's power to connect people across communities. His work is grounded in the idea that design belongs to everyone and should reflect and serve its community. Kevin Reeder joined DMOC in 2021 as the Executive Director of Programming and Operations to oversee the museum's exhibitions, programs, special projects, and partnerships. Since joining, Kevin has expanded DMOC's internship program and built a network of more than 650 community partners. Before joining DMOC's team, Kevin was the artistic director of Cards Against Humanity, where he oversaw their 100-person co-working space and strengthened internal teams and external partnerships. Kevin brings a community-centered approach to all aspects of programming with a focus on inclusion, experimentation, and accessibility. His leadership has helped position DMOC as a hub for emerging artists, civic design, and public engagement. Hao-Yu is the project manager at the Design Museum of Chicago, where she develops exhibitions and creative projects that explore design, culture, and community. Since joining the museum 2 years ago, she has led initiatives that use storytelling to inspire engagement and curiosity. With a background in illustration and graphic design, Liu also creates mural art and multidisciplinary work, connecting creative practice with real-world learning and making design accessible to all. And last but not least, moderator Benjamin Bennis is professor of art and design history at Loyola. He specializes in the history of modern art with a focus on 20th century graphic design. He is the author of Herbert Byers' World Geographic Atlas in Information Design at Mid-Century, published by RIT Press in 2023. And he curated the related exhibition Concept of a Visualist at the Aspen Institute's Resnick Center for Herbert Byers Studies in Aspen, Colorado. Please help me welcome our panel.
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction, Daniela, and I am so glad to have you all here. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. But before we delve into the conversation, I'm going to hand it over to Tanner, who I think can give us a bit of an overview about the Design Museum of Chicago, what it is, and this particular project that we're going to see tomorrow in the Diebold Design Center. So.
Super happy to. How's everybody feeling tonight? Is this thing on? Hello? You told me I would turn it on and I forgot immediately. Okay. Got to push the button. Little things. You know, I never get nervous until I hear somebody talk about me, and then I start to get nervous. So I got to come off that a little bit here. I wrote a couple things to say at the top, and then I'm happy to just engage in conversation. First off, thank you so much for having us. We're thrilled to be here. It's such a treat to be in New Orleans. When we travel this project, we try to pay attention to the city we're walking into. And this is a city that knows how culture lives in the streets, in the food, in the sound, in joy, and in history that refuses to sit quietly. So it feels right to talk about design here, because design is not just logos and posters, as I think you all know. It's how we shape space, how we honor community, and how we imagine what's possible next. So I want to start with how the Design Museum of Chicago came to be and the beliefs that guide us. Then I'll talk about great ideas and why we brought it here, and then we'll get into a conversation. So I founded the Design Museum in 2012 because I kept running into the same pattern. Design was everywhere, yet the places where people talked about design felt narrow, exclusive, and expensive. I'm sure you've all dealt with that too. If you didn't already speak the language or have the right degree or the right job title, you could feel like an outsider in your own cultural landscape. And that felt upside down because design affects everyone. You feel design in the chair you're sitting in today, in the street you walk down, in the bus stop that shelters you or does not, that's design too. Design shapes dignity. Sometimes it lifts people up, sometimes it leaves people out, which means everyone deserves access to it. We believe very strongly in that. So when I was writing about museums in the early days, I found myself pulled into the story of Richard Owen. Richard worked at the British Museum in the 1800s and believed museums should belong to the public. At the time, in order to get to the British Museum, you had to go for 3 visits. First, you had to apply to enter. You'd request access, take an aptitude test to see if you were eligible to see the museum. On the second visit, you'd pick up your ticket, and on the third and final visit, you were marched through in a small supervised group very quickly. These trips, 3 trips, just to see objects that already belonged to the public, that you already owned, frankly. And Owen thought that was ridiculous, as I do too. So, learning should not require permission, is the first thing. So he pushed for open access, clear labels on objects so visitors could learn on their own, and a museum model that welcomed ordinary people. It did not make him popular, but it changed what museums could be, and it really inspired me kind of in those early days. That spirit still guides us. The museum should meet the public where they already are, not demand that people bend to it, that people come find us. We should be where people go. So we built our museum around sort of 3 core beliefs. That's just becoming clear more recently what those beliefs are, to be real. One is that museums should be free and accessible. I believe very strongly that every museum should be free. Most museums earn very little from admissions. The average is 3% at the door, yet the ticket becomes a barrier. If the mission is about cultural access, then the door cannot be a checkpoint. So we removed that entirely. We've got free entry, a flexible space. We do pop-ups in places the public already goes, like storefronts, shopping malls, Navy Pier, public places, O'Hare, not because it's easy, but because it's the right thing to do. And access isn't just cost, it's location, it's language, it's disability, it's inclusion, it's operating hours, it's how comfortable you are in the space, it's knowing that someone like you belongs in the room, belongs in a museum. The second thing, everyone deserves to see themselves in a museum. If you want to serve a city, you have to listen to it. We've done exhibitions where third graders share the wall with established professionals. We've hosted weavers that are blind. We've taken workshops into juvenile detention centers. We've built shows from community listening sessions. We are not perfect, I want to be clear about that, but we try to treat culture as something shaped by many hands and not just a few. When people recognize themselves on the wall, they know they matter, and everybody here matters. The third thing, the city itself, Chicago, is a design museum. Like New Orleans, Chicago is a giant evolving exhibition. We have neighborhood signage, house music, cross-cultural food traditions, murals, public gardens, graphic posters on street poles. The city is already a museum. We just point to it and say, look at this with attention because this is design history too. So that's our philosophy: free access, shared authorship, and a belief that culture is a commons. So about great ideas, which fits perfectly into this worldview. In the 1950s, a Chicago company ran Great Ideas of Western Man. They were called the Container Corporation of America, and they commissioned artists to interpret quotes from philosophers, scientists, and thought leaders, thinkers. No products, just ideas. They were placed in magazines like Time and Life. They were bold, they were unusual, they were very generous. I always admired that ambition and also saw its limits. It was limited to the Western canon and gate-kept voices. There was just sort of a tiny slice of humanity that got to decide what counted as wisdom. So in 2014, with permission from John Massey, who was the design director at Container, we revived it. And on his advice, we shifted the key word or words from Western Man to humanity. So first it was Great Ideas of Western Man, now it's Great Ideas of Humanity. We widened that circle, letting in students, including some students in the room today, poets, activists, public thinkers, elders, and emerging voices who are shaping culture now. Not only historical giants, but also people who hold lived knowledge and fresh language. Each quote is assigned to a designer or artist. They interpret it through their lens, and the artwork starts a conversation. That's really the whole point. Sometimes agreement, sometimes disagreement and tension. Good design helps us think, not just nod along and agree. So we take it into these public places, like Container, because ideas should not hide in textbooks or galleries. They should meet you on the sidewalk while you're carrying your groceries. They should surprise you on a bus ride. They should talk to the everyday rhythm of life, not just special occasions. Some people love a certain poster, some disagree with it entirely, and disagree with the message and the form. And that, to me, is success. A city that debates ideas is alive. So in closing for the monologue here, I believe museums should not build pedestals, they should build invitations. They should feel like public goods, not private clubs. Great Ideas keeps growing because it's not about nostalgia, it's about who gets to speak today and who will speak tomorrow. So we're so grateful to be here, we're excited to share the work, and we want to learn from New Orleans because this place understands culture as a breathing thing that belongs to people. So thanks for having us.
Well, thank you so much, Tanner, and I think it's the perfect way to introduce this conversation, and I find your vision for the museum so compelling, especially the increased operating hours. That's one thing that always gets me with museum. I feel like a museum visit is like the perfect after-dinner activity, but there are really not enough museums that are open at night, right? I think maybe before we get into talking about the exhibition, I'd maybe be curious to just hear a little bit from everyone about the kind of work that you do at the museum. I think a lot of us are just kind of curious about the inner workings of a museum. We don't know all that much about it. We know your job titles from the bio, but I'd be curious just what kinds of things each of you does in that capacity. And so maybe, Kevin, we can start with you and we can kind of go around like that.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for having us here. Thank you, Ben. The thing that I say is, in truth, you hear the term museum and you think that there's this grandiose staff of thousands of people making all this stuff happen. But for us, we're a full-time staff of 4 people. So you have 3/4 of our staff here. So what I always say is that if Tanner's not doing it, I'm doing it. And if I'm not doing it, Lou's doing it. And that's the truth. So, you know, from community building to curation to fundraising to writing the didactics to cutting out the materials themselves and putting them on the wall to exhibition design, like I think we operate really beautifully as a team, and we know how to support each other and help each other over the roadblocks that might exist in any one of our own unique limitations. I don't think we ever view somebody's like knowledge gaps as a threat, but more as an opportunity to learn with each other and overcome. So that was really not specific at all. But I mean, you know, walk through a museum. What does it take to make it open and operate?
Right.
We all touch an element of that at some moment in time. Truly.
Yeah. And Lou, and your bio mentioned that a lot of your work at the museum deals with community and engagement. Maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about what that involves.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, like, hi everyone. Thanks, Ben. Thanks everyone for having us. So, like Kevin mentioned, of course, like we're a 4-people team, so everyone does everything, literally. And with my title, like project managing, it's more about like deadline ensuring, yes, like if this project is going well, what are some like roadblocks, what do my team needs as like help to make sure the process are like the project finish on time where exhibition opens. So that's like a big part, but building community is to talk with stakeholders, talk with designers, to talk with artists and get to know that, how they view this exhibit, right? And what are some like creative thoughts from them? How can we improve or how can we add that thoughts in there as well, since we're so like community focused? And I think like it's a rare museum to be in or to be at, just because how open-minded everyone is and everyone's idea is valid there. So hopefully that answers your question.
And in terms of how you get that kind of feedback, is it just from talking to people in the exhibitions? Are there more kind of formal ways that you get that kind of information?
Well, I think it's very friendly from us that I don't like to approach anyone in a very formal way. And I don't want, like, it's not a business, or it's not like, I'm trying to get something from you. It's more like, we're equal and we're sharing ideas. We're listening to each other, so.
I'll just add on that the challenging part of that is that I fully agree, but also, we are a business. Like we do have to pay our bills. We do have rent that's due. We've got payroll. We've got all of that. And I'm a graphic design kid. Like I came up, went to Arizona State University, got my degree in graphic design, failed out of business school, tried to do a double major, could not pull it off. It was just like, it just didn't make sense to me. And we've grown from the first year we had a $1,000 budget, and this year we're right at around $700,000. So it's just sort of stepped up over time. And I know that sounds like a ton of money. It is a ton of money. We break even. We every year spend all of our money on our mission and try to keep our expenses as low as possible so we can put our money toward the things that matter. And that is another big part of the job that we don't often talk about publicly, because it's not the sexy thing. It's not like we're not curating a show and putting people up and bringing in artists and doing all of that. We're just literally trying to get the bills paid. So that's a really real part of all this too.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that unfortunately sounds very familiar. I think we can relate to everyone kind of doing everything with a small team. I guess maybe before going on, just to hear a little bit from you about the kind of activities that you're involved with as director of the museum and how that...
Everything. Yeah, there's a lot of Zoom meetings. Yeah, pretty much just constant Zoom meetings, board meetings. I had a board meeting this morning. I called in from my Airbnb. It's constant. So I'll say that most of my week is meeting people. I do still get in the gallery. I helped install the last exhibition. I was more hands-on than I think I have been in a while, which felt really good to be down there doing stuff again. But I'm out doing studio visits, meeting artists, meeting with funders and foundations, with donors. We just had our annual benefit a couple weeks ago, so that just take one piece of the picture, and when you do an annual benefit, you've got to find the space, get the insurance, get the food, do the marketing, get the people there, make sure everybody's got the right buttons on. Like there's just every project you break down into 30 or 40 different tasks, and Loop really helps with that. And then we start to sign those out and knock those things out. In the early days, I used to joke, people said, how did you get to start a museum? And I'm like, I just printed the business cards. Like, I literally, there's nothing but questions, and I'm just Googling, or in these days, looking at ChatGPT or whatever, and just asking questions, and then trying to find sources and make sure that the information's right, and then make decisions and move forward. But it's literally just an endless stream of questions that we're making our best answers to. And that's the best way to describe the job. Some days I'm a janitor.
Just to build off a moment of what you said, I love that, our spirit is don't wait for permission. Get out there, do, make, create. Nobody's telling you you can't do this. Go start your own museum. Do a better job than we do. Something that, that's always inspired me that Tanner has said and lives true every single day is that no 2 days are the same for what we do. One day I'm jumping up and down in a trash can to smash stuff down, and then the next day I'm meeting with somebody from the mayor's office from the city of Chicago, to going to a beer can collector's house and sorting through 5,000 different beer cans to find which ones are here locally and historically relevant.
Those are all real stories, by the way.
These are all real. So, when you're like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, I don't know, everything. What don't I do? Yeah.
Well, I'll mention just that my own first encounter with the Design Museum of Chicago was the Great Ideas exhibition. I was in Chicago in 2018, that summer, and I was researching some of the designers who were from Chicago who'd worked on the original Container Corporation campaign. And at the institution, the archives where I was researching, they said, oh, there's a museum in town that has a related exhibition, and went and talked to Tanner and just found the whole concept really exciting. And those initial conversations have led to this. But one thing I didn't realize until just recently was that the first iteration of the Great Ideas of Humanity were bus shelter ads before it was, in fact, an exhibition installation. And so maybe you can just tell us a little bit more about the origins. You mentioned that you'd met John Massey, the last art director of Container Corporation. Container Corporation, the company existed only up till the early 1980s, and so John Massey had been the last art director there, and I guess you formed a relationship with him, and maybe tell us a little bit more about how that came about.
Absolutely. John is doing great, by the way. He's 94. I talked to him just a couple weeks ago. I asked one of his kids, what's he up to these days? And they said, sleeping whenever he wants, which I think is such a great answer. Exactly, yeah. He's just enjoying his retirement. We are in a pretty tight and deep relationship with the city of Chicago. And back in 2014, we were in a public shopping mall called Block 37, right downtown on the 3rd floor, and tried to put ourselves in a place that the public already goes, and then create a free experience there. And we were about a block from the Chicago Cultural Center. So because we were new and exciting, the true story is that I was running into all kinds of issues. We wanted to serve liquor at our opening receptions, let people take a free glass of wine. It's nearly impossible in the city. And Kevin's laughing because he's been through it a few times.
I've got stories for days.
Yeah. And the first time I tried to do this, I'm just going to be overly honest, someone from the fire department came by and demanded a $1,000 donation in order to approve our business license to get liquor. And I was like, I don't have $1,000. We're a bunch of art nerds, opening up a museum in a shopping mall. I'm barely paying myself. I'm a volunteer. So I called up the commissioner from the Department of Cultural Affairs and said, I just don't know what to do here. And she got livid. She was like, this is wrong. It's unethical. He's been doing this. Do not pay that money. I'm going to help you. And she connected me to a couple of folks that were able to help us ethically get through the process. We did have some things we had to fix in order to serve alcohol that didn't require money. And then we became friends. So a year after that, once a week she'd find herself walking from the cultural center to City Hall, and she'd go right past the Design Museum, and she'd always pop in. Half the time it wasn't open hours, but I was there working anyway, and she'd throw the door open and yell, "Tanner!" Sound like Oprah, just really exciting. And she's the one that pitched us these bus stops. So she said, we've got these bus stops, they're brand new in the city, we really don't want them to be advertising. Do you have any ideas for art we could put on these bus stops? And I said, there's this great historic advertising campaign, started getting into CCA history. She was like, just give me a pitch, doesn't matter, just show me what you're gonna put up. So we worked with a couple of designers, Matt Turdich, LaShawn Tynes, Veronica Veronica, what's her last name from Winter Bureau? Okay, no worries, we don't have to figure it out today. Veronica from Winter Bureau. We commissioned, we gave them quotes from the original campaign. Ivan Chermayeff did the first one as well. He did the last one from the CCA campaign. He did the NBC logo and other things. And just sort of threw all this together into a stew and just came up with 4 posters. There were 8 slots. So for the other 4 slots, we talked to the city's cultural historian, Tim Samuelson, and he gave us history, hyper-local history about what happened on that city block. And then we designed an infographic around Chicago, around the design history from that block too. So the whole concept was, while you're waiting for a bus, you can learn something. You can be inspired. You can see something cool. And it just sort of took off from there. That was really the genesis. And then we just have been slowly adding to it as thoughtfully as we can, and we're up to 150 posters now.
Wow. In terms of commissioning artists for those posters, is that a process that has changed in terms of how you go about doing that? I know in the most recent iteration that largely fell on Kevin, if I recall, but maybe one of you guys can kind of talk about that process of reaching out to artists, inviting them to design posters for this.
Yeah. Every exhibition has its own unique process, and I think about curation less about I think about it more about through the lens of community building, right? That we're trying to build a community together, and who belongs in that community? We all do. So how do you reflect that in your best way, but also show up and honor with quality work too. Sometimes you have an exhibition that has deep pockets and deep funding, and you are able to offer folks an honorarium for their work, and other times you're asking for favors. So there's a little bit of both of those things that typically go on. Do you have more you want to say?
I think it's, add on top of that, it's a hard dance sometimes. That we're always open for new ideas. We're always open to talk with people when we're learn other designers' process or whatever design perspective they have come up with, right? We're trying our best to support that. But in the same time, it's a lot of times it's taking advantage in some type of way if we don't have the fund to pay them. So it's really identifying who meets us in the middle, who needs that opportunity, who will take, for example, this time we work with Zach Shantwood, a designer from Morningstar. So he really saw this as a really great opportunity for his portfolio as well. Then he comes to us and give us his idea in changing that visual direction and tell us how he thinks the space can interact with. So those new ideas often get us motivated and excitement in the same time, but it's really hard to find that right person every time, at least in my perspective.
So true. Who knows what the Container Corporation of America is? Show of hands. Oh, I see 4 hands. Tanner, will you give us some really important context?
Ben, can you give us some context? This is your thing.
I think there's such groundbreaking things that these folks did that have changed the world and the way we move through it today that will really offer a cool perspective to what this show is and all about.
You can tag team it. Do you want to?
Sure, yeah. Why don't you start and I can...
Why don't I'll tell one story,
Okay.
because I think
Sure.
you know more of probably the history than I do. Absolutely. So they did so many things. They invented the recycling symbol, is the story that I'd like to tell. So it was like 1968, I think, for the first Earth Day. They published a poster. The poster, you'll see it in one of these slides. It's a tiny little thumbnail. It said, "For the love of Earth, do something." And they, at the bottom of the poster, they had a bunch of things that the mark needed to do to encourage people to recycle. They sent it to colleges and universities across the United States. Gary Anderson from Los Angeles drew the 3 arrows pointing at each other on a sheet of paper, mailed it to Chicago, and they, Container Corporation, they produced cardboard packaging, is probably an important thing to say. They printed it on all their packaging, and then it became water, and it became this symbol that folks see across the world immediately know what it means. So there were many things that they did like that across time that we just sort of pick up and are inspired by and reinterpret for today. Maybe you should have done context first, though, because that's a very specific deep dive.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that is so strange is you see all of these wonderful pioneering works of art, great ideas of Western man was just one project of many. They had their hands in everything, and then people, who is Container Corporation? And you learn that they just make cardboard boxes. They were a packaging company that started in the 1920s. The son of a German immigrant, Walter Pepke, whose father owned a timber company, and he started this company. He was always interested in art and culture, but didn't have particularly adventurous tastes. But his wife, Elizabeth Pepke, was really interested in modern art. And through her, Pepke starts to meet a lot of the European modernists who are coming to the US in the 1930s as they're escaping the rise of fascism in Europe. And one of the things that comes out of this is that Container Corporation is one of the first companies in the US to create an organizational identity, a visual identity, what is what we call branding today. And it involved coordinating everything from the trucks to the stationery to the interior design and the offices and the factories, and to create a kind of unity, a visual unity to it all. And then the other thing was advertisements were a big part of their work, and because they didn't sell products, like whatever vacuum cleaners or shoes or something like that, people didn't really encounter the packaging or their work except as packages with other brands on them, and so that kind of gave them freedom to do whatever they wanted for their advertisements, and they became more and more experimental. And by the 1950s, they decided, in conversation with a philosopher, Mortimer Adler, who was a friend of Walter Pepke, that they would just take out full pages in magazines, find a quote by a writer or a philosopher, or a scientist, and find an artist whose work they thought was exciting, and in that way contribute to a broader cultural conversation, expose a broader public to interesting ideas, to new artistic forms, and it was part of Pepke's vision that business could make a positive and meaningful cultural contribution. So anyway, that's a bit of context there.
Incredible, thank you. Yeah, it's really great. Yeah.
Would you call that the birth? Hey, like art for art's sake? Is that the genesis, the foundational moment in that?
Well, I think in some ways it always did have a kind of function. So at the same time that Pepke, wants to kind of elevate culture, he wants to make culture more broadly accessible, it's also communicating a message about his company. And so, whether it was that his company, embraces the kind of, values that some of these philosophers and these artists also value, it was a kind of also a public relations thing. And so I think it was never truly art for art's sake. It also served a kind of function as public relations, basically buying goodwill towards the company. I mean, in the end, he wanted investors in the company. He wanted the legislators and people to, approve mergers and things like that. And so it did have another function besides that.
And they were just wildly risky too. They did things that were very bold, and sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't. One of my favorite stories was they put together an exhibition called Made with Paper. It was at the Museum of Art and Design in New York in the 60s, was that right? Maybe late 50s, early 60s. And they collected work that was made from paper from all across the world, like 50 countries or something. And I'm going to make up some of these figures because I'm going to do that. Because I don't remember all of them. So sorry for the things I'm getting wrong.
Citations.
Yeah. But so they collected dozens of pieces from all across the world. And as part of this PR stunt where they wanted to get New Yorkers to come see the show, they found these massive rolls of dissolvable paper, and they rolled them out on Fifth Avenue in New York. And they invited the fire department to come down, and they were going to spray them with their hoses and dissolve this paper. And it turned out that it was like 30 degrees that day, and all the water froze, and they shut down New York City for a day and got this like massive fine and got in tons of trouble and got really great promotion for the company and for this exhibition they were working on. John Massey told me, I don't think this story is necessarily in the canon, but he told me that there was a time right at the end, they founded the Center for Advanced Research and Design out of Container Corporation. It was an independent department that was supposed to work on civic projects. So he installed the first advertising banners on Michigan Avenue in Chicago and put them up, and the whole intent was this will never be advertising. This will always be for artists. Of course, now it's only advertising. And didn't know at the time that he needed to cut wind slits in the banners and knock down light poles on Michigan Avenue the first week they were up, and got in tons of trouble, and we got a fine and all of that. We remounted those same banners in 2018 for the 50th anniversary, and that's the first thing he told me is make sure you put wind slits in these things, which we did. But they were a great company.
Yeah, and one thing that I find so intriguing both about the original series, but also with the new project is the variety of artists, the variety of styles. I think, when you look in the history books, the survey books, it'll be the well-known names, so Herbert Bayer, Paul Rand, that get reproduced. But in fact, it was really a cross-section of, some artists who were, just out of college and just starting out, and you're like, oh, they were, I know their work from the 80s and 90s, but they did this thing back in the 60s when they were just starting out. And then other artists who really came from a much earlier generation and were sort of at the end of their careers and were maybe no longer fashionable. And then looking at the new series, so there's names that also appear in the survey texts, right? Really well-known, world-renowned artists, and then a lot of artists that are, designers that are they're the beginning of their careers. In terms of some of the really well-known names, you mentioned before the kind of, difficult dance in terms of, getting people to work when you're a kind of scrappy little operation. How has it been kind of dealing with some of these really well-known figures?
Well, I think the worst thing you can hear is a no. And oftentimes, I think Lou and I share this philosophy as well, sometimes the best thing you can hear is a no. Yeah. Because that means you read my email and you took the time to respond. Thank you. Because very often, when we do this type of collective work, you feel like you're standing in the, at the mouth of the Grand Canyon and just screaming at the top of your lungs, please pay attention to me. And that there's so much value even in a no. Yeah, you got more?
No, completely agree with you. No, it's a great answer for me. And we reach out as much as possible. We're trying to be including everyone. Doesn't matter if you're established or not, because we know that those are the people, those are the community who needs that voice to be spread out, who needs that opportunity than any other ones who's already established in our Institute of Chicago or somewhere like that. So it's really like providing that opportunity out.
I think about it often as well, sort of as a continuum. you know, just like you're talking about, Ben, that like we want to ask our heroes and the people that inspire us or who have inspired, you know, the future generation as well. And truly, for me, selfishly, the hope is that these people who are established, who have audiences, lend their care, their knowledge, and their beauty to the folks who are coming up right behind them. And then that only helps them in their future, in their career. And you hope that through, you know, putting everybody in the same room together and inviting them all to commune and spend time together, that new things will happen and more beautiful projects will erupt from just people gathering together. And time again, I think we see that work happen across the board. It's like find a room, any room, go find a room, fill it with people that you admire, care, and love, and hope that good things come out of it. And I assure you that they will.
And I also just want to add, too, that it's a constant reminder that all of this is so subjective. Like, we know what good design is. We talk about good design. Good design is also subjective for what it's worth. And some of my favorite work is from people I've never heard of in the Great Idea series, and some of my least favorite work is from some people that are in the design history book. And I know, I won't you can ask me after, I'll tell you who I like and don't like. But there's this really interesting, so I think that the people that are emerging are hungrier. I think that we all want to have an opportunity to sort of get a portfolio piece and all of that. And the folks that are in the history books they take it for granted. This is just another poster show. Let me just knock this out real quick, get my name on the wall, and be done with it. But truly, that's one of the things I love about seeing the show, even the one upstairs, is that the work is, my favorite work is from the people I haven't heard, I'm hearing of for the first time.
And as this project has evolved, are there ways that it's changed in unpredictable ways from where it started? Because, you know, of course, the original series, you know, it was just these full-page magazine ads. And I think it's worth noting that the original series, there were these, you know, 11 by 14 pages with the Great Ideas of Humanity. They're larger posters, although you've printed them at, you know, many different scales. But it's also gone beyond that. And so maybe you guys can talk about ways in which the project has evolved. Are there things that, you know, surprised you in the course of its development?
You probably all have different answers for that.
Like, just by working with Zach, I think it's very surprising. It's very, it's such a pleasure for me to be there and see that process, how this project has evolved. Because like treating every installation or exhibition as a conversation, I think that's what we're doing. Because even it's a part of larger ongoing projects, the context change every time. So it's always a new collaborator, it's always new artists, new space, new community. Then we're trying to respond to that shifts instead of like going back to, oh, what worked before, right? So.
Yeah, and I think that's 100% true. And seeing that, like, trying to also define that context. So when we did work, you'll see some flags and some pieces that look very similar, where there's 3 colors and shapes and that sort of thing. And that one right there. So the ones that look like that were done by 3rd to 8th graders. And we sat down for over a couple of workshops and did different exercises. So first we would all draw for a half hour with your eyes closed. Most of the time we do blind contour drawings. And then we would sit down and cut apart shapes that came from murals. And then we would give them the quote sort of after that was all done and have them tie it together. And all of this happened on a desk with paper and tape and scissors. And then we brought it back to our laptops, brought it into Illustrator, added consistent color palettes, sort of elevated things a little bit, and then turned them into flags. At the beginning of this, that's not something we ever anticipated doing. We were just sort of like, let's keep to the roots of great ideas, but expand who gets to have a great idea. And the more we talked about it, we were like, well, we've talked about who gets to have a great idea. We haven't talked about who gets to illustrate a great idea. So let's really think about how to let people that don't know how to use the tools figure out how to tell their story. So that has been very surprising, and that has turned into a mural as well, which was really exciting that one of our old designers, Annie Loya, put together. We've had motion pieces and video, which has been really exciting, sculpture. I think, you know, anytime an artist comes to us and says, can I do X, we always say yes. One of my favorite pieces is from Nick Adam, and he did, I forget the name of the printing style that he did, but there was like one printer in Chicago that could create this, like a cyanotype, I think it was. Is that it? And he couldn't make it the right size, so he made 3 different cyanotype prints and then layered them together for us. But it looked at the end like he'd created on the computer, and we had this conversation about it, and he was like, but the process is what mattered to me. Like, as a graphic designer, I'm always on the computer. I know it looks the same in the end, but I really wanted to try this out, go meet this person, and go through this long process and learn how this works. And it's those kinds of things that I find really exciting as well.
And you know, how would you characterize the reception as it's grown? I mean, it sounds like part of the development has come as a result of the reception, but maybe you can talk a little bit about how this project has been received as you've both installed exhibitions at the museum, but also as you've reached out into these other spaces.
We see so many visitors that there are bound to be people that dislike it. So we get everything. I would say it's been mostly positive. We have about 6,000 people a month that come through our gallery, and then we put our work in places like Navy Pier where millions of people go. This show in particular has been to Hong Kong, Milwaukee, New Orleans now, Chicago quite a bit. It's really been all over the States to many different universities. And you know, we definitely get our fair share of haters, and our fair share of people that really love the history. One thing that I also love about the show is that you can spend 5 minutes with it, or you can spend an hour with it. You can sit down and read every quote and really kind of get lost in it, or you can just pass through on your way to class. You know, I think that the biggest audience for this was in Hong Kong back in 2018. And it was kind of a crazy moment where Michelle Boone, my commissioner friend that I was talking about earlier with the fire commissioner, Michelle had an opportunity to take an exhibition to Hong Kong that represented the city of Chicago. And it was one of those pass-through moments where she was going from the cultural center to City Hall. She swung through, yelled, "Tanner," and then came to my desk and was like, "Do you want to go to Hong Kong in 30 days? I was like, okay, like, sure, I'd love to. What do you need? And she was like, well, we need to tell the people of Hong Kong about Chicago. And I'm like, I need more information. Like, I'm happy to help you, but like, what does that really mean? And she was like, well, so what happened was they invited us to come and do a booth at a trade show where they expect 120,000 people to come through, but it's gonna cost $50,000. We don't have it in the budget. We told them no, and then some billionaire paid for it. Now we've gotta go, and they've renamed the trade show Chicago Made, so it's all about Chicago. We don't know what to do. And I was like, well, we just did these bus stops with you. We did 4 of those. And posters are pretty easy to roll up and take on a plane. We don't have to frame them. We can do this pretty quickly. And she's like, great, let's go, let's do it. Give me a budget, let's figure this out. So that was like the first moment where we had scale. Within 30 days, we commissioned about 30 new pieces, literally rolled them up, put them on our backpack. 3 of us went to Hong Kong, installed them in about 3 hours, and then 120,000 people came through and saw them. And truly, it was like defining Chicago for the city. We got to hang with Jeannie Gang and Theaster Gates and Emmanuel Pratt and all of these like really wonderful people that also got to go and represent Chicago through presentations and that sort of thing. And then when we came back, it sort of had lit this fire under us for what great ideas could be, and it expanded from there. So that was also just a total surprise, where it was sort of evidence of sometimes you just have to start and get running, and then the opportunities will present themselves. You've got to leap before you look occasionally.
Great. I think maybe we're at the moment where we can take questions from the audience. I know a lot of you have things you're curious about, and some of you have contributed works to this series, and so...
Thank you, by the way.
If anyone has questions, we can turn it to the audience.
Yeah, we can't see anything.
Thank you all for being here. I know it's class time and you have to be here, but we really appreciate your time.
Yes, a question. Hi. I'm always curious about development and where the money comes from. You know, we all freelance, we all have big ideas, but when it comes down to it, everything costs money.
If you can imagine a place that money comes from, we get money from that place. I would say, though, largely it's individual donations and grants are the 2 biggest categories. We're probably about 30% individuals, 30% grants and foundations at the moment. We don't get much corporate sponsorship. Occasionally we do. We'll get $5,000 or $10,000 here or there. That does add up, of course. Grants come from city, state, federal often will come through the city, so we'll end up there most of the time. We have a store, we have events, we have an annual fundraiser gala. We do we have a membership, and then the membership will design T-shirts and stuff that we'll sell as well. What am I missing? Everything.
Daily donations.
Yeah.
But we don't charge no one for tickets, so there's no commission fee, and we don't. Of course, we don't get that %, but there's a donation box. So every month, there's kind people who will give us donations. So.
What else?
That truly, I think you nailed it.
Commissions too. We do design commissions.
That's true. Yeah. We will take on special projects and design work too.
Logos and things, all over the place.
You said you started your museum out of an abandoned shopping mall. Just like, what's the story of that, and like, how did you decide on that?
Wasn't abandoned, but it sort of felt like it was abandoned, honestly. It was like 70% vacant, but there was still an Anthropology, and like a chocolate shop and that sort of thing. So basically, the first year that I launched the museum, I was, gosh, how do I get into this? So it was a pretty tough year. I had a lot of loss in my life. I was going through divorce, all sorts of bad things were happening. And I had the freedom to pour myself fully into the concept. So I called 6 or 7 people over to my apartment. We had a quick conversation about what Chicago needed, whether it's a magazine, a newspaper, a blog, a museum, a gallery. And eventually we were like, Chicago is very culturally rich. It has everything but a design museum. Let's give it a shot. So we set our sights on a 2-month timeline to launch a design museum in the city. And pulled it off, truly. Our budget was $1,000, and we got on Craigslist and found a real estate agent who had a space over in Humboldt Park, which is like a pretty amazing part of the city, also pretty dangerous, to be honest. And we took over a third floor of an old warehouse. This was before the shopping mall. And did anything you can imagine a museum needs to do in 2 months. So if you just think about the store alone, like you got to source the stuff, set up the contracts, get the payment system, get change, get a cash box, but then you have 4 exhibitions, you have marketing, you have all of that. This is the part that I often overshare with students that I don't talk about outside of this, but my mom passed 24 hours before we opened the doors. And what that meant was, this was 14 years ago, I've dealt with it, I'm in a good place. But what that meant was that I wasn't physically there for 6 weeks before we opened. And as founder, it meant that we didn't have that leader. Volunteers flooded in and built the place and became part of our DNA. And I think that's part of the reason the community really embraced it. So after a 1-month pop-up in this West Side warehouse, 3,000 people came through. One of them was this guy, Aaron Gadiel, and he said, I'm so impressed with what you're doing. It's great. Do you want to try it in the Loop? I was like, yeah, that's the whole point. Let's get to the Loop. And he's like, well, I'm a marketing manager at the shopping mall, and it's going to be hard to convince my bosses, but we need some vibe. We need some energy. We need some authenticity. What could you do in a month? So I went down, started touring, looked at a couple of spaces. One was 1,000 square feet. I was like, this is way too small. This won't work for us. And then he opened this room that was 17,000 square feet. It was 4 times the size of this room. No electricity, no drywall. I was like, this is perfect. Let us do it. We paid $5,000 just to get an electric box installed for the month to have electricity. We built walls, we put in drywall, and then we had exhibitions by Michael C. Place in London, Wolfgang Weingart in Switzerland. We curated our own show on optical illusions. We had Marianne Banshees from Canada, and then John Massey was our 5th one. That was when I really started getting close with John. And we had 6,000 people come over the course of a month, and then shortly after that I quit my job and started working on it full time, and it's just sort of grown from there. So it was just sort of one of those things that just needed to happen, and the more we threw at it, the more opportunities were presented, and then we were able to keep chasing that vision. It's a lot easier said in retrospect, by the way. In the moment, it was very hard.
Hello.
Oh, hey,
over
up
here.
there, yeah.
Thank you guys for being here. So I heard you talk about motion, and it's an older poster series coming back. And with the evolution of new technologies and new way we have design, I was just wondering about like new ideas on where this can go beyond a poster series, like for 3D elements, interactive elements, just like we learn about all that different design here and how to apply that maybe to great ideas.
Great question.
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, you know, like even thinking back to like the first iteration of the series, I don't think social media was quite what it was then, what it is today. So even in that small microscopic view, like, well, now we get to share the work so much with so much more ease than we could before, right? Like you had to come to a room and see the work. And I think it's always so different seeing something in person than seeing a little tiny square on your phone at 2 a.m. We love to kind of create boundaries or a sandbox or rules, but loosely held, strong ideas loosely held. And then, we invite the artists and designers to challenge us and surprise us and push us to new spaces. Like, I don't know, did you ask Matthew Hoffman to do a sculpture, or did he say, I'm doing a sculpture?
I gave him the quote, and he said, can I do a sculpture? I said, yeah.
So, same thing, I'm sure, with the video elements that people did in the past. We're like, hey, would you create a poster? I'm like, nah, can I do a video instead? Like, okay, cool. I think we all have weird feelings about AI right now, and we're not really sure how to navigate those. And I think that will continue to be a conversation as we move forward, too. It's kind of a divergent topic from here, but there's a local gallery in Chicago. Ooh, I forgot their name. But anyways, they when NFTs were brand new, they were an NFT gallery, and so everything that they were doing was completely virtual as well as being physical, and so they put everything on screens. So I think there are those moments that are just going to continue to evolve and surprise us, and we're all in it together. Like, I think design at its core is often future forward. So we'll try to put a sail into the wind.
Well, guess what? Guess what Loyola Design did? Tomorrow night you're going to come to the show and see it. But there's a few things that we evolved for the show, and one is Matt Norman's class took 6 posters and turned them into animations. And the our amazing UX team put QR codes on every poster. So now we have access to the writers and the designers and the library, and where we can find out more information about these individuals and expand our knowledge. And also, again, the theme of great ideas, we're going to encourage you tomorrow night and for the next 5 months to contribute to what is a great idea to you. There's 70 of us in this room tonight, so we have at least 70 great ideas here. So the idea of continuing the conversation is going to continue at Loyola Design, right? Who else has a question? Anybody else? Because John has another question, but if anybody else does, I'm going to give it back to John.
Well, and John, let me just say that if you have any ideas for how we can push the campaign, we're all ears. We'd love to hear them too.
Truly, that's such an important part to every exhibition that we do. When you think about a museum, we always want to have some element of us listening, right? And like giving space for the public to share and challenge us. So we're never staying stagnant.
Pitch us. Pitch us. Give us your idea. Love to explore.
Well, thank you for that. That's definitely something to continue to think about. And strangely enough, you kind of answered my second question, which was about AI. With the series being named Great Ideas for Humanity, like, do those ideas always come from humans or AI? And it sounds like you guys are already starting to have that dialogue. But I look forward to it.
Well, pardon me, my wife is an IP attorney, so I'm going to geek out a little bit. AI is human knowledge regathered and regurgitated back to us. So it is already our collective knowledge, right? It's machine learning just spit back out and remixed. So we all made it already. As trippy as that is, I'm going to sound like the high kid in Philosophy 101 right now, but like, it's ours, man. We built it already. Yeah.
So I'm curious if you want to talk about this, if you remember. But so Ben also put together a committee to select quotations for the exhibition we did in Chicago earlier this year, and many of these posters ended up in the gallery here at DeBoll as well. And one of the committee members, Lauren Bogan, were you even aware of this? Had proposed a book that was written by AI, and she was going to try to select some quotes for the committee from an AI source. I'm not sure if she ever proposed it to you or if she killed it. Didn't come up, okay.
I remember an initial conversation where you mentioned, I think that there was some discussion about whether there could be an AI-generated great idea. But beyond that, I don't recall the specifics about Lauren and the book. But I would say my first reaction would be to kind of bristle a little bit.
Of course.
Because, it's a... as Kevin mentioned, it's really regurgitating, but also using just predictability, right? I mean, that's really what AI, it predicts, based on all these millions and millions of examples, this word is more likely to come than, the next word in the sentence. And, but, I don't know, one thing about this series that for me I find surprising is the way my assumptions get challenged and the way I reflect on my blind spots and biases and will in the course of looking at submitted quotations, my first reaction might be like, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea, and I, would not recognize the name of the whoever the author was, and then would find out about that author and be like, oh, that's a really interesting person, and then read the idea again, and all of a sudden notice something really meaningful in it that I didn't see the first time, and so, maybe my stubbornness with AI is also something I should...
Also, I think knowing her well enough, she probably stress tested it with me, and I had the same reaction, and she was like, okay, we're not going to do that. But it's an interesting idea, truly, and I tend to believe that we need to find ways to embrace AI. That's my personal opinion, very carefully. I think you can't just take things that it gives you at face value for all the reasons we're saying up here. You've got to look at sources and find other... But for me, it's sort of like Wikipedia. Like, it's like a great way to get a quick understanding of a subject, and then you can dig deeper. So I think it would depend for me on just sort of where it is in the process. Is it generating art? We do have one piece in the show that was generated by AI. I'll let you try to figure out which one it is. Yeah, no, if you want to know, let me know. I'll tell you one-on-one. But otherwise, yeah, I think as far as quotes go, to me, that's a very different conversation too. Yeah.
So in your opinion, what separates a good idea from a great idea? Mm-hmm. And what has been your greatest idea?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question.
I don't know how I can really stumble my way through answering that. Perfection is the enemy of good more often than not, and to chase perfection, you will always be chasing it, right? So personally, I'm like, well, let's create more, let's build more community, and let's not wait around for that 100% A+ paper that we're all trying to chase. That we'll continue to work towards it. Yeah, I've got a lot of bad sketch comedy that I've written, and a lot of good sketch comedy that I've written, and I'll dig around and find a good sketch for you sometime.
Yeah, and I'll just say I think that's a really fascinating question, because one of the things that in the course of researching the Great Ideas campaign is that this was a conversation that the people who started it, the founder and CEO of Container Corporation, but also the art directors and the VPs of the ad agencies, 10 years into the campaign are still saying, can we define what a great idea is, what we mean by this? And they never could figure it out. And so they're publishing hundreds and hundreds of these things, but there was never any consensus of how they would define what made an idea great and distinguished it from another. And so you kind of have this collection of the these ads that maybe collectively are great ideas, but they can't really say what ties them together or makes them great. So to me, it's an interesting, experiment.
Absolutely. I don't know what separates a good idea from a great idea either, and I think time is the only way to tell. I don't think anybody, unless you have a giant ego, has an idea and says, "Oh, that's a really great idea." I think that it's one of those things also that I think you know when you see it. Like you kind of know bad design at your core because the chair leg breaks or the doesn't function, something doesn't function the way that you expect it to. I'm often reminding people that it's around my house, not at work so much, that when I'm criticizing something, I'm like, things are good and then we're gonna make them great. That sort of thing. Like you can always iterate something and make it better. I'm curious what everybody's greatest idea is too. I want to be really sappy. Mine was having a kid. I think she's been. Yeah. We're both girl dads, so.
Well, I'm a dog mom, so. But I also curious about what identifying good ideas from great ideas. I think 10 bad ideas makes one good idea. That's my theory, because you have to try what's out there, what works, what doesn't.
Good answer. And how many good ideas makes a great idea?
Right? 100, maybe? Just making up things. Jokes.
All right, I think we can end it on that note, huh? So let's give another round of applause. And I'm going to see each of you tomorrow night, where? The DeBall Design Center, 4th floor. 5 to 7 p.m. Please come and get some free food and drink, and come look at the great show. And come. There's gonna be a walkthrough. I think a short walkthrough at the beginning, or at some point of the series. So it's exciting. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay. QR code is outside. QR code's outside. Thank you, everyone.